Trade barriers constitute one of the most consequential instruments in international economic policy. They are measures imposed by governments that restrict or regulate the exchange of goods and services across borders. Their forms vary considerably, ranging from tariffs and quotas to licensing requirements, technical standards, subsidies, and administrative delays. Although often justified as mechanisms for protecting domestic industries, preserving employment, or safeguarding national security, trade barriers also alter market incentives, redistribute welfare, and shape the strategic behavior of firms and states. A tariff increases the price of imported goods, thereby making domestic alternatives relatively more attractive. This mechanism may provide short-term relief to local producers facing foreign competition. Yet the same measure typically raises costs for consumers and firms that rely on imported inputs. The resulting effects are not confined to prices alone. When import costs rise, supply chains may become less efficient, production may shift toward less productive sectors, and retaliation by trading partners may reduce export opportunities. In this sense, the apparent protection offered by a tariff may conceal broader losses in economic efficiency. Quotas operate differently, but can produce similar outcomes. By limiting the quantity of foreign goods allowed into a market, they create scarcity and frequently generate rents for import license holders. Non-tariff barriers, such as complex customs procedures or product regulations, are more difficult to observe yet often more effective. They may be introduced for legitimate public purposes, including health, safety, and environmental protection. However, when designed or applied in a discriminatory manner, they can function as disguised protectionism. The analytical challenge lies in distinguishing regulation that corrects market failure from regulation that merely shelters domestic producers. The political economy of trade barriers helps explain their persistence. Concentrated groups that benefit from protection tend to organize more effectively than the diffuse groups that bear the costs. A small industry can often lobby successfully for safeguards because its gains are visible and immediate, whereas the losses to consumers are dispersed and less easily attributed. This asymmetry produces a recurrent tension between economic logic and political incentives. As a result, trade policy frequently reflects negotiated compromise rather than pure efficiency. Nevertheless, trade barriers should not be evaluated only through the lens of static efficiency. In certain circumstances, temporary protection may allow infant industries to develop capabilities, achieve scale, and eventually compete internationally. During crises, governments may also deploy restrictions to secure critical supplies or stabilize fragile sectors. The central issue is not whether barriers are always harmful, but whether their design, duration, and objectives are justified by clear evidence and accountable governance. Absent such discipline, protective measures tend to become permanent, inviting complacency and reducing innovation. The contemporary trading system therefore treats trade barriers as both an economic and institutional problem. Their use reveals the competing claims of sovereignty, fairness, resilience, and openness. A coherent policy must balance these claims with an informed assessment of costs, benefits, and unintended consequences. In the final analysis, trade barriers are not merely taxes or restrictions at the border. They are expressions of national choice that can strengthen protection in the short run while weakening prosperity if left unchecked.